All right, many of you know that I rap. I still rap. I got bars. You can go check out Kirk Kennedy anywhere on any streaming service that you get with. Rap music, whether you like rap or not, is incidental to me. I'm not. I don't really care. But it was the art form that I was drawn to as a non-Christian, and then used as a Christian. So I benefited from it in many ways, but it was also definitely traumatic for me, like everything is. I think, any music, any style of music can be detrimental or anything, right? So I want to talk a little bit about this new song that everyone's talking about. This song, now the people who watch my channel may not follow hip hop and rap and stuff like that, so this may be of no use to you. So hopefully the algorithm will point it to the people who bang with this type of content, right? But today I want to talk a little bit about this new song that Kendrick Lamar dropped. First things first, welcome to CNN. I'm Kirk Kennedy, the underdog. Let's go in. On this channel, we take no part in the unfruitful works of darkness and instead expose them. If you are of the Christian tradition, such as I am, you want to we remember the past and we remember the future. The day of the Lord is approaching, and we are on the road to 5K and beyond. So thank you. I lost about 5 subscribers yesterday, 6, and then I gained all back today. Oh, it's so funny trying to grow a channel on YouTube. All right. So if you're, again, I'm a dude where rap is a part of my background, a part of my DNA. If that's not you, I totally get it, totally understand. If you're waiting for a Caitlin Clark video, stay tuned. This is about Kendrick Lamar, quite possibly in this moment, the biggest rap artist in the world. I think many people would have said that was Drake for the longest time, and they would have been right in saying so. But over the last couple months, beginning in sort of May, pretty much around the month of May, there was a head-to-head. There's always been this subtle kind of back and forth between Kendrick and Drake. But there was a head-to-head that all of us, everyone knew what was going on. Names were mentioned and all of it in that time. And in that head-to-head, Kendrick was the clear winner. He was the clear winner of it. And I've said this before, the primary reason why is because if you don't understand rap culture, which is a microcosm of black culture, here's the thing about black culture, and this may sound a little racist towards Drake or white or Jewish people. It is not, but I'm just trying to help you understand something about black culture. Black culture, for many reasons, which we won't get into right now, is a more aggressive, upfront, in your face. Some of it comes from the history of oppression and things like that, and there's an overreaction to many of those things. That's one thing, right? And so in this battle where Kendrick and Drake, you have to understand who Drake is. Drake is half black, half Jewish, was raised by his mom, who was Jewish, and more clung to his Jewish roots growing up, and spent some time with his dad, who I believe lived in the Memphis area. And so he had he's light skinned, so you could tell he's mixed, but he largely grew up in a white community, in a Jewish community, right? Well, the way that people who are Jewish and white people, the way they deal with conflict is completely different. Completely different. White people typically are more passive aggressive, while black people are more aggressive passive, which means we passed being passive, we just aggressive with it, depending on the situation. And that calls for a lot of challenges in the world. And I've experienced some of those. But that's just where we are. So when you get to this battle, you get really what happened was Drake, the biggest artist in the world at the time, is going against Kendrick, a very well-known, established artist. But Kendrick had an axe to grind that was much deeper than Drake. Drake had an axe to grind, and he didn't really appreciate the culture that he was in and the kind of who he needs to tap into his black side more. Kendrick from Compton, a rapper from LA, Compton, was rapping, and Drake was cracking jokes. And like typically, Drake has a lot of, you know why Seinfeld was successful? Seinfeld was successful because it was quintessential white humor. And I hate to overgeneralize because but it was quintessential. White humor is largely sarcastic and passive aggressive. And so a lot of Seinfeld, which dubbed itself as the show about nothing, just had a lot of these weird, sarcastic, And when you understand the sarcasm, it's hilarious. And that's typically me being around white people. That was typically white people's humor, sarcasm, and I'm saying it, but I'm not really saying it. Well, black people, our humor is direct. We're gonna say it to your face. We're direct. So black humor is a different thing. You have to understand. Drake was dealing with a man who's direct, who's going to be direct in his rapping, and he's up here on IG and TikTok joking around and making memes and jokes and quoting, using sarcasm, and it didn't work. So Drake got obliterated, especially when Kendrick Lamar put out They Not Like Us, right? Which highlighted that Drake has an affinity for younger girls. And since then, there have been multiple dynamics and situations of cases where people are saying this is true, to the point where Drake has not recovered yet and is looking bad. And Kendrick just got nominated, not nominated, but just announced that he's going to be the Super Bowl performer next year. Having said all of that, Kendrick drops a new song. It was perfectly timed. Perfectly timed. It doesn't even have a name. He put it on his Instagram. I don't even think at this point you can go anywhere and get it. But he drops a new song, and all you see is some dusty, creased up black Air Force Ones, which apparently was taken from an eBay ad that was released earlier that day. So it was funny. And in this song, initially people thought this was a Drake diss again, like another Drake diss. And because it's essentially called The Party's Over. It doesn't have a name, but the sentiment is the party died. The party died. And this point is, it's time for me to see the party die. And the way he's describing the party, people said he's talking about Drake. And if you look on YouTube, people will say he's talking about the music industry. I don't think Kendrick is doing that at all. I think he's saying something much more profound and much more deeper. So I'm going to unplug that a little bit, unpack that right now. First of all, we have to understand what this song is in the generation it is. Kendrick Lamar just proved from his battle with Drake that he is essentially the big homie. He is the leader of the culture. He is speaking. Kendrick has always had this sort of, I'm speaking for the good of black people, not in everything, but, we gonna be all right. This King Kunta, he has these songs that are somewhat of a black empowerment. He had a song with Beyonce called Freedom that I think Just Blaze produced. Beat was tough. His verse was tough, all of that, right? He's always been sort of this kind of vibe. And then you have Drake, the quintessential party, womanizer, materialistic guy, right? And these come head to head. Kendrick drops his song, and he's talking about it's time to watch the party die. And he starts, the whole song is him unpacking what the party is that needs to die. The whole song is that. He's unpacking it. And it's clear that he's not just talking about Drake anymore. He's talking about something different. I'll get to that in a second. But let me say what this song is first. Kendrick has proven himself now. He's the big homie, right? He's the big homie speaking to the culture. The last time I've seen anything like this, the last time I saw anything like this happen was in 2008 when Jay-Z dropped. It was so Jay-Z came back in 2007 after a 2.5-year hiatus of rapping. He comes back in 2000, and in 2008, he drops his second album. I think it's called The Blueprint 3. And his lead single from that album that was done by No ID, Crazy Track, was called Death of Auto-Tune. All right? The Death of Auto-Tune was Jay-Z as the then big homie speaking to the music industry and the culture, rap culture, and saying, y'all are killing the culture, man. We need to put an end to this auto-tune. Auto-tune got super popular by R&B singer T-Pain. Let me buy you a drink. Oh. It got really popular. But then Lil Wayne incorporated auto-tune to everything he was doing. And then it just became, and it was cool to a degree, but there were times where it was like, man, I wish he wouldn't rap with the auto. It just was different. Right? Now, after Lil Wayne, a whole slew of rappers started to use this. And now we have guys like Future and stuff who all uses, and it's still somewhat of a useful tool that people use. But when Jay-Z spoke to it in this Death of Auto-Tune song, he was basically saying, as the big homie, the one that people look to as the leader of the culture, the one who can speak to the entire culture, and he was saying, y'all killing the music industry, man. Y'all making everybody. We need to put this is the death of auto tune, right? This is death of the auto tune, king of the ringtone. He was just going after everything, right? Saying cut auto tune out, like that's it. La, da, 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 hey, goodbye. Dun, 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 dun. Only rapper to rewrite history without a pen. No ID on the track. Let the story begin. Jibbit, jibbit, begin. Jibbit. This is death of the auto-tune. He was saying, stop auto-tune. You're killing the music industry. We're tired of auto-tune. Let's get back to rapping. Let's get back to good rapping, lyrics, and all of that. And Jay-Z at the time was the only one who could say that. After that song came out, I remember T-Pain was worried. He was upset. He was mad because that was his livelihood. But Jay-Z was talking about rappers using auto-tune. There was a period of time where auto-tune died down. It died down. Then eventually it picked back up, and now we have... But now rapping has come back. Kendrick's new song, whether it's called The Party Die or whatever it's called, Kendrick's new song is this generation's The Death of Auto-Tune. But it's deeper. It's much deeper because Jay-Z was talking to the music industry, which tries to just carbon copy. There was a time where, especially in hip hop, I don't know about other genres if this is true in country, R&B or whatever, but in hip hop, part of what made hip hop what it was a sense of originality. If you're old enough to remember hip hop in the 80s, New York had a slang term called biting, like don't bite, which means don't imitate, don't copy. And so much of 80s rap and even into the 90s was about people trying to copy them. And so there was almost like a code that you had to be original. If you sounded like someone else, you would get dog walked back in the day, right? And so then when auto-tune comes up and Lil Wayne kind of uses it a lot, then it becomes the sound of the generation. Everything starts sounding the same. And so when Jay-Z dropped this song, Death of Auto-Tune, he was saying, enough. We've heard enough auto-tune. Let's get back to rapping. Let's get back to it. Kendrick's new song is this generation's The Death of Auto-Tune, but it's deeper. Let me explain. Kendrick, some people think he's talking to the music industry. He is not. Kendrick Lamar is not talking to the music industry at all. He's talking to something deeper. He's not even talking to... artist or whatever. Kendrick Lamar is not dissing the music industry. He's dissing a segment of the black community. That's who he's dissing. And this is what I think people are really missing. When I hear the song and hear what he's talking about and know how he's presented himself, Kendrick Lamar's his song is The Death of Auto-Tune, but much deeper. Jay-Z was talking about change the music, change the rapping. Kendrick is talking about change the way we think, live, act, and present ourselves. Change what we care about. Change what we talk about. Change what we teach. He's going after something much deeper. He is not dissing the music industry. That's too shallow. Yes, the music industry, in many ways, the rap music industry, does sell messages to youth that are there, but some of these youth aren't doing what they're doing because of music. They're doing what they're doing on a deeper level because of Satan. But if we're thinking superficial level, they're doing what they're doing because of the culture and the product, the environment that they're from. If you take away all rap music, these dudes aren't going to stop shooting and killing. They just ain't going to have ain't going to have a soundtrack to do it to. Kendrick is speaking to something deeper than Jay-Z did in Death of Auto-Tune. And he starts with, highlighting Drake, his battle with Drake. I think he's clearly talking about he had to get rid of a Drake. We had to kill the killers because they was taking innocent victims, right? And Drake was known as a killer. He battled, Meek Mills and won that, even though he lost to Pusha T. But there was this sense where he was the dog. He was the one on top. He had a song called Mob Ties talking about killing. So Kendrick knows what he's doing. His wordplay is intentional. But then the song starts to develop. But what's the party that needs to die that he's talking about? And he's talking about one. So he does hit the music industry. This acting a certain way to get favors from other people, right? Begging people, doing things, acting out of character just to get advances in the music industry. He does hit those things. But then he talks about developing the way you talk to the youth and poisoning the youth. He talks about He mentions gluttony, but he's not talking about being overweight. He's talking about the fattening the minds of the youth in the black culture to live in a certain way that is not good for them. It's not good for them. Kendrick Lamar is going crazy on this song, and he's the only one right now that can give that message. The way Jay-Z did Death of Auto-Tune in 2008, Kendrick is the only one that can give this message. He's the only one. And right now, because he dismantled Drake and Drake's sort of longevity as the top artist. Now, I mean, if you're a Drake fan, you're still going to think Drake is your man. That's fine. But for most people, we realize he crushed Drake. He made Drake look dumb, and he made Drake look worse than dumb. He made Drake look like you are the problem with the culture. You, Drake, you are the problem when he said you're not a colleague, you're a colonizer. You use the culture, you take the worst of it, you use people to keep your advantage, you gain, and then that's what he's getting at. And so on this song, Kendrick Lamar is saying the party that needs to die is the way that a segment of the black community lives, follows the kind of leaders that Drake is, which you're just blowing money. He said, because you're insecure, spending money, and he said, you spend more money, you party more than girls do. He didn't say girls though, but he used a different word. But he's talking about these dudes I couldn't be proud of none. For when he said, I would trade Nip for all of y'all, I'm not proud of any of you. That language, I'm not proud of you, that's big homie talk. And Kendrick is doing that now because everyone knows he's got the ear of the culture because he dismantled Drake in a way that no one thought was going to happen. No one thought. Everyone thought it'd be a good battle and they'd go at it, but he really dismantled Drake. And from a Christian point of view, I think it's really interesting. Kendrick would more claim to be a believer or something closer to that, where Drake doesn't. If you look at it from, a lot of believers are like, oh man, Kendrick isn't, he's no good, he's doing this, he's doing that. On one level, sure, but if you think about it in terms of what as best as he can pursue righteousness and morality, right? His last album was called Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers. As his whole album was about him dealing with the immorality in his life so that he can become a better person and realizing how he's been affected and the impact it's had on his wife and his children and so forth. Kendrick is essentially brought us into his therapy session to help people grow. So even though he's not proclaiming Christ in the way that all Christians think they should, the real issue is he's talking about a morality that I would say even conservative Christians would agree with. We think missiology is moralism, and it's not. But Kendrick is more saying, look at the immorality of these people. Look at what you do. Look at how you live. Look at what you promote. Look at the sins you're causing other people to commit based upon the way you celebrate these things. He's representing on one level a degree of righteousness, and that righteousness that people respect him for gives him the platform to say, I'm not proud of none of y'all. I wish Nipsey Hussle, a guy from Compton who died a couple years ago. I wish I could bring Nipsey back. I'm not proud of none of you. That's big homie talk. That's him speaking to the culture and saying, like, what do we got to do better than this? And him saying, it's time to watch the party die. What is the party? The party is the it's the love of self, the love of money. It's basically 1 John 2. The love of the boasting of what he has, the boasting of it, the lust of the flesh, the lust of the eyes, the boasting of what he has and does. Kendrick is saying in this song that party needs to die. We need to burn the whole village down and start over. Now, I don't think he can do it. I think a lot of people respect him and so forth. I do not think Kendrick has the power to do it. But what he's trying to say is better than what most believers are saying to the world. We're condemning the world, and he's saying, I know this world, and this world isn't good, and I'm going to do something about it. And he started with dismantling Drake. Drake, if he's humble, can grow from this, but if he's not, he's going to be offended. There's a scripture that says, when the consequences, I'm paraphrasing, when the consequences of a man's sin catch up to him, his heart rages against the Lord. And that's just very indicative. It's like when your consequences catch up to you, then you're mad at the people who enforce the consequences. Now the Lord is the problem because what you did finally caught up to you. Kendrick brought consequences on Drake, and now we'll never see Drake the same. We may still like his music. You may still, when he comes out, but you're not going to see him the same. You're not going to see, anytime they say Drake's dating, you're going to know how old is she? Who is she? You're never going to see him the same. You're never. He did that. Well, now in this song, he's saying it's not just Drake that needs to change. I showed you that. But because I showed you that, I'm saying the black community needs to change. It's not just the music industry, yes, because it has a great impact on segments of the black community. But Kendrick is going after something much deeper. He's going after the black community and saying, we need to stop this party, this facade that how we're living has any positive benefit, any of it. You know, we boast about, he didn't say these words, but we boast about the street life. We boast about these things that we Christians call sin. We boast about having sex with, we boast about all these things. I remember when Juice WRLD, who was an artist, I think he was out of Chicago, or he was signed by the Chicago artist, Lil Bibby. And Juice WRLD was like, he blew up for a while. And I remember Juice WRLD telling this story that when he met Future, who's a very popular rapper, he went up to Future and said, hey, you got me started on Molly like drugs. Like hearing Future rap, he said, you got me started on drugs, and Juice WRLD eventually OD'd and he died. And I don't know how Future felt when he heard him say that initially, but after he died, I hope that he felt some type of remorse and took some responsibility. But the music doesn't indicate that. And then Nicki Minaj came out and said, man, these artists don't even do these drugs like that in real life. She said, Future don't be in the studio smacked out like that. That's just all entertainment. But people, the youth, are believing your entertainment. They're believing you like rap music can be in some senses, like the way the women carry themselves from Sexy Red on down. They talk, you basically are, because we idolize, because people are drawn to people who entertain, we give them a platform, a leverage that we should only give to Jesus himself. We treat these people like they're larger than life, like they're Marvel Cinematic Universe heroes, and people love them. We do it with all celebrities, athletes, whoever they are. Because you can entertain me, you are like God to me, and we treat them like that. So everything they say becomes the word of the Lord, but it's just the word of the world. The world of the world. The only difference between world and word is L. Word is Jesus. World has an L in it, and that L is Lucifer. The world. Lucifer runs the world. And so Kendrick is really saying to the record industry, to the black community, this party needs to die. It needs to die. And in the song, he does something that shocks the majority of people. He names two believers that are both musicians, rappers in their own right. He says this one bar, sometimes I wonder what Lecrae would do. And I remember when I first heard it, I was like, hold up, did he just... So I rewind this back real quick. Did he just say, I wonder what Lecrae would do? So I listened and thought, let me see where he goes with this. And then he mentioned, I wish I had the compassion of Dee-1, and then it fades, and then he says, I'm sure it was something violent or artistic. Kendrick is very artistic. And then he later again says, sometimes I wonder what Lecrae would do. And everyone had an opinion on it. It was the people who, especially believers, it was like, oh my God. You got some people like, man, who cares about this dude mentioning believers? We don't need that. It's always that, right? But then you had some people saying some very things like they were grateful for that. And then you had KB put out a video and had a really good take on it because he's friends with Lecrae. And basically, in summation, just said, I think this is the result of their influence. And it was thanking, Lecrae for his influence. But I think something deeper is happening right there. I thought it was great. I'm shouts to Lecrae and Dee-1. I thought something deeper happened there. Something deeper happened to why he said them. I think KB got it right when he was talking about because you have to think about it first. Why would why would Kendrick mention them at all? Like D1 is not nearly as popular, not nearly as well known. But let me tell you about D1 real quick. Last year, D1 he blew up a little bit because he was calling Rick Ross, who's a rapper, who promotes a very sinful, evil lifestyle, and Jim Jones, another rapper who does the same. And D1 was saying, look, they gotta basically telling them to choose which way you're gonna serve. He was calling them to account. He was basically saying, y'all are influencing the culture in a negative way. And then they both responded. Rick Ross was like mocking him, and Jim Jones basically threatened him, like, man. But a lot of people understood what he was getting at. And he went on a little circuit for a while where he was on all these podcasts. And I even saw some recently where D1 is a consistent dude. He's a believer. He loves the Lord. He's from New Orleans. He's been through it, but he has a consistent message. It's a message pushing back against the culture. And KB's said he was talking to his son and explaining to him about D1 and said he's been consistent. You could play a D1 song from 14 years ago and play one now and it'd be the same message. D1 has been a faithfully consistent believer, just growing in his craft and in his faith. He mentions D1. But then he mentions Lecrae. Many of us know Lecrae. Lecrae was the darling of the Christian world, for real. I mean, Lecrae, many white people who don't like rap latched on to Lecrae because his popularity grew. Around 2010, his popularity grew. And then Lecrae kind of developed this, him and Andy Mineo, after developing the 116 crew and all that. And it was all about, like, it was like the Christians in the church were happy to have a rap artist that was accepted on a broader scale. And all of a sudden, he starts saying, hey, I'm not a Christian rapper. I'm a rapper that's a Christian. And he just wants to do good music and not necessarily music that teaches or whatever. And, you know, if you hear Lecrae talk now, Lecrae would say himself, and I'm paraphrasing, that he lost his faith a little bit. He got disillusioned. He felt like he was being used by the evangelical church. And I think to a large degree he was. I don't think that was the reason why he did everything that he did. But I think he was used by the white evangelical church, and he felt some type of way about that because this was all happening right around the time where the Black Lives Matter rising, and there was a real racial rift in the contemporary evangelical church in America. And so Lecrae felt a bit betrayed and felt he was disillusioned, and then he was blowing up in the secular world. He got in a record deal, a distribution deal with Columbia Records, and dropped it. You know, there was all this stuff, and he was starting to say negative things about the church, and Christians were like, "Hold up, man, what you doing, bro?" So it looked like Lecrae was essentially departing from the faith and then dismissing the faith to the world, almost like what we call airing out dirty laundry. And so eventually I think Lecrae dropped this album with Columbia and it flopped. And I think after that, I think reality hit Lecrae. This is what I think. I don't know if he would agree with this. I think it hit him that a lot of his sales were still coming from the church. And people felt like, you've dissed the church too much, we're not supporting you. And that album flopped with Columbia. And then I think he went back to just doing his stuff with Reach Records. But then Lecrae has come back in many ways to the overtly Christian side of his faith. Like I'm not saying he would say he was disillusioned and wasn't really, there was a period of time, his marriage was in trouble. These are all things that he would say. But I think now people would say Lecrae is overtly displaying his faith, all right? So it's interesting that Kendrick Lamar says, it makes me wonder what Lecrae would do. Would he basically, he said it in a different vulgar way, but he said be violent or show these guys what prayer would do. Then he said he wished he had the compassion of D1. So Lecrae is highlighting two people who are believers and acknowledging that, like, hey, I wonder what they would do. And he's using that. And we don't know what he really meant, but let me offer you this perspective. He was saying, I wonder what Lecrae would do, and I wish I had the compassion of D1. But I think Kendrick was surprisingly embodying both of them. And let me be clear who Lecrae is and who D1 is. D1 represents the saved and faithful to Christ, continuing to grow and mature and call the world to repentance. D1 is the John the Baptist and Lecrae is the prodigal son. He's the son that grew up and then went astray for a while and then realized this ain't it. And he came home. Now, many in the church were the big brother, offended. Still mad at Lecrae. Still mad at the dude, the big brother in the parable of the prodigal son. Well, I didn't go anywhere. I've been here all this time, and I haven't gotten what he's gotten. They missed the point that I think Kendrick is highlighting, that he's speaking to. Lecrae's the prodigal son. He's strayed and he's come home. So for him to be mentioned in this song by Kendrick is iconic in many ways. But I think Kendrick, because he's really clever at what he does, and maybe Kendrick doesn't even know he's doing this, I think he's embodying both Lecrae and Dee-1. Because when Kendrick said, look, he talked about tough love sometimes has to be violent, right? As far as we know, he has not been violent towards Drake or to others. We don't know of any stories where him and Drake got into it and the tough love is. So he's speaking. And so what would the violence be? The violence would be him calling out the failures, the lies, and the sinfulness of Drake and others who associate with him. You know who else does that? Dee-1. That's exactly what Dee-1 does. That's why Dee-1 got his name blew up, because he was calling out Rick Ross and Jim Jones and others, but mainly those two names. And he was saying they gotta do better. They gotta change up. They gotta switch up. They gotta choose God or choose. Now I thought he was going a little too far in the sense that he was talking to them. I felt like they were believers that needed either, like they were lukewarm Christians. And I was like, these people have chosen the side they're on. So telling them to choose a side is like, well, they look like they've chosen their side. But I respected Dee-1 and his voice and his faith for doing that. And so when he says, I wish I had the compassion of Dee-1, on one level, Lecrae's embodying Dee-1 by calling out the failures in the black segments of the black community, calling out the failures in the music industry that helped shape these segments of the black community. He is doing exactly what Dee-1 did without mentioning names and with greater credibility. Kendrick is embodying Dee-1. So I thought it was humorous on one level for him to acknowledge, I don't have the compassion of Dee-1, but you're actually embodying the very thing that he's trying to do. So I thank you for that, Kendrick, and thank you for drawing attention to Dee-1, and I hope more people hear about Dee-1, his music, and his message. But then he's also embodying Lecrae because Kendrick, at least in his Damn album in 2017, there was this sort of even back on Good Kid, Mad City, there's this part of he does this whole prayer with this old lady, and they get saved, and then there's that journey, but it's not really genuine, but it's kind of like I'm wrestling with it. Is it real? Is it not? I'm kind of going back and forth, like, do I believe in? And that's the story of Kendrick. There's this tension of, I'm trying to be this good person and righteous person, but I'm also being attacked by Lucy, which was To Pimp a Butterfly. The lure of money and prestige and sex that he called Lucy, which was short for Lucifer, he was constantly battling that. And it was almost like I'm the good kid in a mad city battling Lucifer, and it was like I'm trying to find my way. And then he drops the Damn album, and then it's like, okay, I'm fine. He's got songs like Humility. He's got songs like God. He's trying to figure it out. I'm trying to get to this righteous point, because I'm tempted by this sinful to go astray, so to speak. Now, I'm not saying he's a believer fully. I'm just using the analogy to make the point. And then Mr. Morale is basically his way of saying, I'm coming back to, I'm recognizing. Mr. Morale was him being the prodigal son, in that I'm looking at the fact that the servants eat better than I do. Look at my life. I'm not happy. My family's hurt. All these things happen because of my giving in. And so Mr. Morale was sort of his return back to a level of righteousness. And then he deals with Drake. He's a prodigal son in his music, going back and forth. And that's exactly what Lecrae was. Lecrae was the prodigal son. He went astray. He grew up, went astray, and then Lecrae comes back. And now Lecrae has got a podcast and doing his thing. So Kendrick is masterfully not only highlighting these guys who are believers. Don't think the industry's like that. Who's Lecrae? Oh, Lecrae's that Christian dude. If you don't, I don't know what Kendrick truly believes, but that right there, if nothing else, I think, this is what I think. I think that was a gift from the Lord to encourage Lecrae and Dee-1. Kendrick Lamar right now is the biggest rap artist in the entire world. And he could have said anyone else or not said their names. He mentions Lecrae's name twice. Lecrae doesn't come close to the popularity that Kendrick has. And D1 doesn't come, he's not as popular as Lecrae. So Kendrick puts these, that was the Lord, I think, encouraging them. And hopefully it draws people's ears. Like KB said, it will draw people to wanting to know why they're different. What would they do? What would they do? Why did he say those names? I hope that's what happens. But this song is an incredible song because Kendrick it's the death of auto-tune, but deeper. And as a black man, a former street dude, a dude who was facing 43 years in prison for wanting to embody the lifestyle that the music culture helped shape the way I thought about what it means to be black and black culture, which is to be violent, aggressive, murder, drugs, prison, all of that. As a person who comes out of that world, bravo, Kendrick. I don't know if you're saved. That's not my point. That's not my point. Because the church isn't really reaching out in ways that are really noticeable like this. There's always Christians doing stuff in different communities in different cities. But this right here, by Kendrick saying what would Lecrae do in D1, and when people find out who's Lecrae in D1, it gives the church not credibility, but it gives the church an opportunity for mission. This is what it does. This is a gift from the Lord. It's not about, oh, we don't need people to validate us. Man, hush up. Because first of all, you would probably want to be as popular as Lecrae and Dee-1 too. We all did. We all wanted to we all thought if we had this platform, we would never, man, we don't know what we would do. But the reality is like by him saying that, it just gives people a sense of mission. And Kendrick's songs have a long tail. They last. So this is an opportunity for mission to ask people, hey, what do you think about Lecrae, that song? You know who Lecrae is? Did y'all know who Lecrae and Dee-1 are? You can find out who they are, explain to these people. Why do you think he said he wanted to know what they would do? Why would he, out of all the people, he didn't say I want to know what Pac would do. He didn't say I want to know what Big would do. He didn't even say I want to know what Nipsey Hussle would do. He said I want to know what Lecrae and Dee-1 would do, the prodigal son and the John the Baptist of the CHH. In other words, I want to know what God wants me to do, what God would say. Man, this is a good moment. It's a good moment. This isn't about what you think about Lecrae or whatever. It's a good moment. Lecrae's a prodigal son. Applaud that man. Welcome home, brother. Welcome home. Glad to see him back, man. Glad to see him doing his thing. Glad to see him wrestling with. Listen, a lot of us, I didn't deconstruct my faith, which no, because to me, deconstructing your faith is deconstructing eternity, Jesus. But I did deconstruct some of the ways, some of the things I was taught, and I realized, oh man, this is just, listen, I'm going to say this and I'm going to be done. Because y'all know Caitlin Clark didn't play at 7:30 and I need to watch the game. Plus, this is a big game because, well, I'll say that for a different video. I think a lot of this stuff right now that we're seeing in the culture it's really cloudy, it's really dark. You can't trust the political side. You can't trust anything. You can't trust anything. It's all satanic. Every time I turn around, there's under witchcraft, a promotion of the devil, videos of people doing this stupid thing, and all it's just like, and they have no idea what they're doing. They don't know. When Jesus said, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do, he wasn't saying they don't know how to crucify men. These are men who this was their specialty. He was saying they do not understand the consequences for their actions. They don't know who they're crucifying and the judgment that awaits them. And I think what I'm hoping happens is this. Everyone's going to have their opinion about Kendrick, and I could be 100% wrong. But I wouldn't have made this video if I didn't think I was right. I think Kendrick's song is a deeper death of auto-tune. I think he's not dissing the music industry, but a segment of the black community that learns, it gravitates towards the music industry that promotes this party lifestyle that needs to die. And the fact that he mentioned Lecrae and Dee-1 means that Kendrick understands that this party lifestyle has some level of eternal implications. Even if he doesn't fully submit himself, he understands by referencing to believers, and not believers, not like the Kanye believers. When Kanye came out with Jesus Walks back in 2004, You know why that song was a hit? It was a cool song sonically, but you know why it blew up? Because it was an anomaly. It blew up because it was an anomaly. Jesus walks. Look, God, show me the way because the world's trying to take me down. Jesus walk with me, with me. It was a cool song, but you know why else people got into it? Because they knew Kanye West wasn't genuine, though. They knew that it was just a song. It was entertainment. And the beat was good, and it had a little marching beat, and it was back when Kanye was still new, so you never really heard his production, and so it was a dope joint. It was a good song sonically, but it wasn't theological. It wasn't good in that sense. But sonically, it was a great song but people also knew this dude ain't real. When Kanye West then decided, no, this is real to me, when I'm going to do this Sunday service and all of that, a lot of people were like, man, where the old Kanye at? And they were prophetic because the old Kanye is back, right? For Kendrick to say this about Lecrae and them, he's not talking about dudes who claim to be Christians that aren't really Christian. That's not what he's talking about. He's not talking about, he didn't name people that are faking with it. He named a dude who was out there in the industry, got disillusioned, rejected elements of his faith, and then came home. And he spoke about another dude who has been the John the Baptist, preaching that message, ready for whatever. Telling Herod, you can't have sex with you can't marry your brother's wife while he's still alive. Rick Ross, you can't say this to the community. There's consequences for it. Jim Jones, you need to repent. He highlights two dudes that are genuine in their faith, in different paths, different reasons, but believers here. This is an opportunity for mission. This isn't about being validated by the world or by a non-Christian as far as we know. This is about, remember when Jesus said, you can look at the sky and tell it's going to rain by the way that it looks, but you can't understand the signs of the times. Remember when Jesus said that? I think that's Matthew 13. Remember that? I hope we understand the signs of the times, because Lecrae saying that, God is sovereign. Kendrick saying that about Lecrae and Dee-1, God is sovereign over him saying that. He's sovereign. He told him to use those names for a reason. And we, as for those of us who believe, we can say, hey, how do we turn that into mission? Stop fighting over, well, we don't need nobody to validate us. Hush all that up. Look at the signs of the times. This is an opportunity for mission. We can talk to people. Hey, what'd you think about that song? That song was tough, right? The song was tough. And as I'm saying this, I need to humble myself. I was in the barbershop today getting my hair done, and I missed an opportunity. I wasn't even thinking about it. I was thinking about the message. I got to preach on Sunday, and I was working on my message and didn't even think, man, I'm in the barbershop. I could have asked anybody, what y'all think of that Kendrick joint? I'm so disappointed right now as I say this. I missed an opportunity. I was in the shop. It wasn't as crowded as it was, because it was like, Friday, early day. You go there Friday night or Thursday night, it's packed. But I missed an opportunity. So I'm not coming down the mountain with 2 stone tablets. I failed today. But let me get around some folks again that know. I'm going to ask, what'd you think about that song? When he mentioned Lecrae and Dee-1, you know who they are? And I'm going to use that as a platform to hopefully just tell people, why do you think Kendrick mentioned them? Because those two guys, they represent hope. But not just hope like Jesse Jackson, like, keep hope alive. No, he said, I wonder what Lecrae would do. Punish these dudes or show them what prayer would do. Prayer is only connected to God. And if you connect Kendrick mentioning Lecrae with prayer, then Lecrae only prays to Jesus. So Kendrick is making a statement. Dee-1, the compassion is a fruit of the Spirit that's connected to faith in Jesus. God is using Kendrick to draw attention to Jesus by mentioning 2 men who are serious about Jesus. And they have different walks that people can relate to. But what do I know? What do I know? I'm just a dude trying to understand the culture and tell you what I see to see if you agree. All right. Big game tonight. Caitlin Clark, Las Vegas Aces. But there's a big opportunity here for Caitlin Clark. And we'll talk about it. See you when I see you.